All right. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so thank you all so much for being here. I know that this is like a really hectic time of year, but there's no time like the present to knock out your business plan. So the mission for today is to have this completely done by 3 p.m. Eastern or whatever your time zone is, within an hour, if not sooner. I'm going to introduce myself for those of you who I don't know as well. And I just wanted to give everybody a chance in the chat. Can you drop your location and your number of years in real estate just to kind of get a sense of who's in the room? And then I am going to just tell you a tiny bit about me. I know a lot of you, but not every single person. So I'm Tina. I've been a real estate agent for 20 years this year. I have been leading a boutique team in the Baltimore, Maryland market since 2013. Cumulatively, I and my team members have sold over 2,000 units, close to 500 million in volume at this point. The source of my business has predominantly been repeat referral, organic social media, and some version of farming, which has fluctuated over the years, different formats. That's a whole other topic beyond what we're going to get into today. And I'm a teacher at heart. I love helping agents succeed, think differently, and take control of their business. And my thing is I can teach you how to be successful with repeat referral and sphere without needing to be Instagram famous or cold calling or sending postcards to kingdom come. And you can do all of those things if you want to. But if you're looking for a clearer, simpler solution, that's kind of the space that I inhabit. So I'm all about simple, streamlined systems. You're going to see one of them today, up close and personal. It's nothing fancy. It's just a high functioning spreadsheet that helps me focus on the essentials and also hand a budget right to my bookkeeper. So we'll talk about that. I'm at a point right now where my business is quite automated and seamless. I like helping agents get to the same place. I mostly do this through a course called High Performance Agent Academy, where I teach you my systems, give you the templates, coach you through getting it all done. I am going to put the link for the Academy in the chat box. If ever anyone wants to learn about it, this is like one of 150 templates that you get in the Academy for various aspects of your business. And with that being said, I'm going to take a breath, look in the chat box. I'm very curious to see the spread on. Okay, yeah, it looks like we're averaging 5 to 10 years in the business, which is perfect. And some people that are brand new, and love that, love that. One of the things that I wanted to try, which I've never done before, was putting up a poll. Let's see if it wants to work. I'm launching a poll. Can you guys see it? Anyone? Does it pop up? Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay. So what I want you to do is just check off the boxes where your business is coming from. I'm just going to get a sense of in the room. And, if you have it coming from 8 places, like you can check them all. I just kind of want to see what some of the patterns are here. So thank you. Okay. It's rolling in. Love that. And, we're not going to get into, we don't have time for how to achieve the goals you're going to set, but the first step is to set the goals and be clear on at least like what the key sources of business are that you want to be focusing on. I'm hosting this because I actually taught this live a week ago today, right here in Baltimore. It was very well received. I put up an Instagram story. This is just a little lead generation tip for you guys. I put up an Instagram story after I left of my feet walking away and asked if anybody wanted to have a Zoom version. And I got a lot of messages, and I post my stories on Instagram. I push them through to Facebook. More than half the messages were on my Facebook Messenger. So you just never know where people are watching. But why I'm telling you this is one of my best strategies for creating more engagement in my business, besides the DMs and PMs, which are huge. It's how I've built so much like just business that comes to me that way. That is where I figure out what my events need to be, or even like mini client engagement initiatives. Just yesterday, I took 7 people to a sound bath who were all had all replied to an Instagram story, 3 of whom were like new friends, and I think are going to be great business sources for me. So just a plug for posting what you're doing and inviting people into your world, because I am always amazed by who is watching and not saying a thing for like 10 years. And then suddenly there they are, ready to transact. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to recap. We're going to do three big things. One, we're going to recap your 2025 production. And a lot of this might need to be ballparky, giving it your best guess, which is great. Like we just need to get started and get it done. You can always go back and refine later. Second, we're going to set your production goals for 2026. And then third, you're going to draft your 2026 budget and get that ball rolling. And again, we're going to be done in under 54 minutes. So obviously we don't have time to get to exactly how you're going to execute your goals. And if you've ever set goals and not hit them and felt mystified or frustrated or overwhelmed, I get it. And for me to achieve my goals, there's actually a lot of things that need to be lined up for me to be in the space. The first thing is just like my mindset overall. Honestly, I would say like, do I feel empowered or disempowered? Like it's as simple as that. Like just sort of like, where am I at as a human, but as it relates to my business. And if I'm in like a major rut, like I need to get help. I need to get help at any point in these steps if I'm stuck, but that is the one where I find I can stay stuck the longest. The second piece is having clarity on what I am doing and why I'm doing it. And then from there, staying focused and avoiding shiny objects. I have an agent I'm coaching here, and she's already making the face. She knows I'm lovingly talking about her. We have a plan for Tanya to be changing so much in her business next year, and just reducing so many of the objects. So that's something I'm just going to encourage you to like think through today is like we reflect on what happened in 2025 and what you want to take into next year and also what you want to leave behind in this year. Another big piece is how we manage our time and our energy. So that's like big picture concepts like saying no to non-priorities, avoiding procrastination. Also like practical things like what time of day are you most productive? What time of day or day of the week do you need to protect to be able to work on your business? So if any of this is like ding, ding, ding for any of you, we can talk about some of this later. But before the like, what am I going to do to generate the leads and close the deal? All of that is in the way or a factor rather. Then we get to the overarching strategy of how you're going to build your business and then the specific tactics inside that move the needle. So I encourage you to if you see that there's an obstacle that has been recurring with anywhere in that framework, I'm happy to talk to you about that after today. The space I inhabit as a coach and teacher is really to help people from the beginning all the way to the end. If I could label myself as anything, it's like an implementation coach and figuring out like, what is that thing that's in the way? And there might be 10 things, but like, what's the really bad one? What's the thing that we really need to deal with? And with that, starting with mindset, that is what I really want to, kick off with here. And we're going to get into the actual planning in just a couple of minutes. In my course for agents, the Academy, there are 12 parts to it. And one of them is the money module. And that's where I walk people through setting their business up properly, what we're going to do today as a part. And then there's other things associated with that: wealth building, transaction tracking, net worth tracking, things like that. But what I find in all of my years of coaching agents is that there are 5 key pillars to having a strong money practice. Number one is, this is something that someone said to me long ago. I don't know who to credit, but no one's coming to save you. So for me as a team owner and a person who hasn't, sort of abdicated responsibility for figuring things out, like I need to take responsibility for the reality that no one else is going to do it for me. I can hire people to help me. I need to inspect their work. I need to hold them accountable. I need to cut it loose when it isn't working, but like no one's coming to save you. And anyone here who has been in the business for more than a year knows exactly what I'm talking about. So I think it's the taking responsibility is first. And there's also like all this emotion wrapped around money, right? Like it's so common to not want to look and to be afraid of looking or to look and feel really overwhelmed. So one of the main things we're going to talk about today is grounding yourself in reality, because what I have found is when I stop avoiding and I just look at what exists, then I can do something about it. And I might need someone to hold my hand while I do it, or I might need to just go to a quiet place with no internet or whatever the case may be. But grounding myself in facts has always been the first step to me affecting change. So that is the main kind of part of that we're going to be talking about today. The third thing is establishing simple, sustainable habits that keep you in tune with your money, that are manageable for you. We're going to talk about a little bit of that at the end if we have time. The fourth pillar of the 5 is hiring professionals. So I just want to say, I find that a lot of realtors resist hiring a bookkeeper, even though it is one of the most affordable things you can leverage out early on in your business, way before taking on a salary or a half-time person or a VA contract. So if this is something where you know that you don't have a grip on your business spending, on your cash flow, if your tax return is your worst nightmare every year, the beauty of having someone run your books is by the time it's time to do your return, there's literally nothing to do. It's all there. And then for me, I'm really able to keep my finger on the pulse of my profitability and my expenses on a monthly basis, which is enough for me to make sure that things don't just run away from me. So if that is something you want to think about more, I encourage you to do so. I think the 2 leverage points that help realtors the most early in their business that aren't personal leverage, like childcare, house cleaner, and things like that are absolutely wonderful and helpful for many of us. The 2 big professional things that are really smart to leverage very early on are bookkeeping and errand running, because that tends to be one of the lowest dollar productive activities, getting keys copied, getting lock boxes hung, et cetera, things like that. So that's my tip on hiring professionals. And then the 5th piece that we're also going to be working in through today is setting achievable goals that you can work towards and actually measure your progress. And, in the chat box, I would love to hear where you fall on the spectrum of goal setting. And there's no wrong way. I've come from both places at different times. There's the school of thought of, I want to set a goal that I know I can achieve, that is a bit of a stretch, but it's doable and it doesn't make me sick when I think about it. And then there are the people that love setting like a wild stretch goal and just throwing it out there. And that feels like really energizing and empowering. So one of the many things we're going to be talking about today is like knowing yourself and then like working with that. So if anyone wants to put in the chat box, are you like the stretch goal person, or are you the reasonable, realistic goal setter? And then just whether you want to say that in the chat box or not, something to think about as we start to work through this today. And also knowing if there are patterns that have gotten you in trouble with how you think and approach, because I think this is all a head game, right? At the end of the day, like everything in business is a head game, especially when it comes to money and generating business and running our business and dealing with relationships and people. So I think it all kind of, stems from there. So if there's a cycle that you're looking to break next year, I encourage you to like get out a piece of pen and paper and like write that down, like something that you want to leave behind this year with how you're approaching the way you talk to yourself, the way you look at your business, how positive you are to yourself, how kind you are to yourself, things like that. So let me look at the chat box. Yeah, the disappointment when not hitting the stretch goal can be a real factor for a lot of us. So, yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of, this is interesting. Shannon said, I don't set production goals, really. I don't have a minimum I have a minimum I want to hit. So yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about working a referral-based business, and let's come back to the poll, 85% of the business in this chat, all of us, is Sphere, 55% referral, 55% repeat, 70% referral. So that's, top of the line, followed by open house and agent referrals at a much smaller proportion, and then just a tiny bit of the other things. And by the way, I don't know if you probably couldn't add your other stuff in there. So, but it looks like it was pretty minimal. So for every single person here, this advice is going to apply. I think for a long time in my business, I wanted not the magic bullet, but that would, that's always nice. Who doesn't love a magic bullet? But I wanted the proven formula that if I have this many parties and do this many pop buys or write this many personal notes. I'm dating myself because that's what I started with 20 years ago. I didn't start with parties right away. That actually really intimidated me. If I, send this many emails to this number of people in my database, it's going to result in this much business. And I am here to say that is not how it works. It is and it isn't, right? Because what I have found looking at myself and coaching a lot of other agents is there's so much nuance in the quality of our relationships with our sphere, the depth of time, the amount of trust people do or don't have in you, which is often directly tied to A, how long you've been in the business, but B, how well you communicate your expertise. So it's a little bit all over the map. So I think the best yardstick we can use is improving over what we've done and then measuring from there and kind of figuring out what personal conversion rates are. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I think that it can be really tricky territory to be like, okay, I have, this many people in my database and this is how it's going to perform next year. Like I'll say 2025 is one of my team's best volume years in the last 6 years. Huge. The year prior was strong, but only because we had a large portfolio of investment properties we sold for one of my oldest long-term clients. If that hadn't happened, it would have been a very weak year for my team. And there's not that much I did differently between last year and this year. I did recruit some agents to my team. One of them did bring some production along with her midway through the year, but that doesn't explain the differential. And what I think is so important in this business is to keep running your plays and have faith in them. And then also, if there's a part of you that knows the plays you're running just aren't working, then there's that piece to deal with. But there are some swings when you work a referral-based business and you're not like fully prospecting based and like, okay, well, I'm just going to make 100 extra cold calls a week to hit my goals. Like that is a very empowered way to run your business, actually, from like a, predictability standpoint. But at the end of the day, like we don't have that control as much when we work by referral. So if this resonates with anyone, just know like you're not alone having dealt with that. So with that being said, is there anything else I want to check on? We're going to get into the meat of this. Okay, great. So today I'm going to be giving you one of my Academy templates. So a little Christmas gift to you. I'm going to be putting this link in the chat box. It is going to open into a Google document that it's going to ask you to make your own copy. And then if everything works right, it'll open up into a Google sheet that you can start editing and working within. And I am going to switch my screen here. Okay.
It worked.
Okay, good. Once in a while, there's someone where Google isn't behaving and I need to directly share it. So hopefully that won't happen. But if it does, just put that in the chat box with your Google email, and then I can get you in there. Okay. Going to pop into a screen share now, show you what I'm looking at, and it's going to take up your screen, and then ideally you're going to be like half and half with what you're seeing here. Okay. So, and I'm also going to zoom in. Okay. So there are 2 sections to this spreadsheet. It's programmed. So anything that is orange is something that you should edit and manipulate. Anything that is black is related to the formulas and would be best not edited unless you're really good with spreadsheets. So don't touch it unless it's orange on page 1 and page 2. The second tab at the bottom is where we're going to jump to your 2026 goal setting, and then that's going to flow right into your budget. And then on the third tab, there's like a little financial health checklist that you can take a look at later, and we'll touch on that if we have time. So what we're going to do here is do a quick recap of 2025. And if you're just not sure, like I said, put in a guesstimate, put in your best guess, and that is more than suitable. And you can always go back and, comb through the MLS or whatever documents you have later and, make some updates if you really want to. So, by the way, and one thing I'll call out is I do separate your buyer and seller average sale price, average commission rate, and units, just because for a lot of us, there is some differential there. Or if there isn't, this is sometimes like an awareness opportunity of like where the opportunities lie. So I'm going to just work through an example while you work through yours. So what I want you to do is input your buyer numbers now, your buyer average sale price, your buyer average commission rate. I'm just going to kind of manipulate this a little bit, and the buyer units closed that you closed this year and have under contract closed by December 31st, just to keep it really simple. And that's going to calculate your buyer gross commission income. And then go ahead and do the same thing for your sellers. And I'm just going to play around with making some changes here. And then what you'll see below is that it tallies up your total number of units, your total volume, your blended average sale price between the buyer and the seller, and your total gross commission income of everything added up. I need to make sure I've got the chat box open. Have I lost anyone? You guys all doing well? Okay. The chat closed. Okay, there we go. This presentation requires one too many windows. Okay. So then getting into the deeper details here, some of this may be not relevant to, how your business is structured. So just be aware that you can leave anything zero that, does not apply. So referrals, fees received, this would be any inbound income you got. Like you placed a referral with an agent in another state, your client moved to, Florida, and you got, X amount in referral fees. This is just good to ballpark and be aware of. And this is one thing that I feel in our social media age, there's so much opportunity. I'm averaging one out of state referral a month, close to it. And it used to be far less than that. It's the easiest income in my life, I would say, aside from things I do that are like literally 100% passive. So just something good to be paying attention to. And then on the profitability side, and again, just ballpark the total referral income, gross income, before company splits or fees. And then referral fees paid out. Similarly, if you have a big referral arm in your business and you have, a couple agents that, regularly send you referrals, that's, a factor in your profitability. So if you're like, okay, like I actually get a lot of inbound referral business, thanks to my social media presence as well. So we'll drop in some referral fees there. The admin fees or other fees per transaction, this is an income section, okay? So depending on your state and your brokerage and all that, maybe you charge an additional marketing fee or an admin fee. This is something if it's going to you, not the brokerage. So if you have that and plug it in, it's going to, I'm just going to put $300 as an example. It's going to multiply that by your units and calculate your, additional fees earned. Also, one thing that's not in my sheet is anything related to leasing. So if, you might want to change one of these fields for income and add that in if that's, a piece of what you do or commercial or, anything different than kind of the standard residential that's in here. And then the last piece, if you work at a brokerage that does revenue or profit share or any sort of stream of income, if you have brokerage ownership, then I would definitely encourage you to put that there, especially because it's commission income and factors into your tax picture and all of that. So when you fill in these fields, it's going to roll up to your total gross commission this year. This may not be completely accurate just because you're using some averages above, but it should be pretty close once you've got, the right sale prices and commission rates dialed in. I find a lot of agents go back and look through and realize that sometimes things are a bit lower than they thought. Like, oh, there were referral fees. There was this, there was that one where I got knocked down. And sometimes it's on the flip side where you just haven't looked and you're like, wow, like my listing side average is way more than I thought it was. Like, why don't I focus there more? So definitely encourage, little reflection moments for, things to improve on and things to celebrate. And then this is where it can get a little not confusing. You just need to know how your brokerage works. And if you're on a team, there's some extra calculus to do here. So you are generally either at a brokerage where you have like an annual or set amount per year or per transaction that that you pay, a cap, et cetera. So if you're at that kind of brokerage, I'm going to tell you to put that amount here, especially if there's like sort of some other fees that roll into it, like E&O, et cetera, just like put that flat amount here in this line 35. And then down below, there is, if your brokerage has a fixed split model and you're going to want to, I think, just zero all of that out. Yeah, what's the move there? Oh yeah, you can just ignore it. Sorry, because the on line 36, if you're at a commission company, your net income is going to be accurate there. If you are at a brokerage or a team where you just have a perpetual like split, a flat percentage, or even if it's something that goes up and up, you'll kind of want to figure out just like what that average percentages that you get and keep. So say you're on an 80-20 split, which is kind of how this is programmed as an example. You just need to manipulate the part that your broker gets. So say you're on a 50-50 split with a team, that's actually going to auto calculate as well. So wherever you are is going to auto calculate, and it would help if I had 20% of the broker. I was like, why did those numbers mess up on my end? Okay. So that is going to be your net income. And this is always like a good gut check moment at this point in the year. If there's any like conversations you need to have, things you want to examine with, renegotiations, talking to your broker, that's obviously like a whole other topic, but this is like a natural time of year to go ahead and do that. So that could be something that you kind of like side note here as like an action item. And then what we're going to do from here is review the sources of business that you actually had this year. And I'm actually going to use Tanya as an example because I know she won't mind. We did a source of business exercise in a call. And then we had like a follow-up conversation where she was sharing with me different lead generation activities she was doing or interested in doing. And as we connected the dots, it was like, okay, a lot of these things that are like nice to haves, not one of them led to all this sphere business you did this year. And one of the reasons that's so powerful, besides just like knowing that, is it can often release that like FOMO and sense of, because like you guys know, as agents, there's like a billion ways to lead generate. I was talking to a really successful agent yesterday who not only is she giving herself a hard time that she's not an Instagram influencer, there's people in her sphere that have been forwarding her like this one account saying, you should do this. And she's like, it's in my head. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, look at your business. Like you don't even need to create that content. So I think if you're having any of that shiny object or whatever, like digging into this after we get off the call could be really helpful. Just knowing, like in this example, this is someone with like a 28 unit a year business. If you were to even ballpark, okay, 10 were from, 5 were repeat and past client, 10 were from my sphere, 10 were referral. And then, I got 1 from an open house, 1 from an agent referral. Oh, and I did get 1 from that farm, that one postcard I sent. So I encourage you to just figure out what these units are. It'll auto calculate what percentage of your business is coming from those places. And then this can also like obviously start to inform your strategy for next year of like, where do I need to dig in and where do I need to do more? Where's there more potential? What am I underutilizing? And also like, what am I spending on that only did 1 transaction? And it's not just sometimes like the ROIs there of like, oh, I did these postcards and I did get 1 closing, but there was also the mental labor of like, designing them and getting them out and thinking about them when maybe I could have just gotten like 1 more referral through like, posting on social media like a little bit more. So it just sort of gets into that like pick your poison. So that's like obviously this data is good to have. I just want to give you some ideas on like how I look for what is the easiest way for me to get where I want to go and do less and streamline. And if that feels a little unclear to you, then we can have a conversation, but I want to just kind of plant these seeds. The last thing that I want to encourage you to do before we move to the goal setting is to look at this line 64, which is the current number of people in your database. So hopefully you have a CRM. And if you don't, that is totally fine. But that's something to definitely put on your list for next year. But hopefully you have a list of people somewhere, a spreadsheet, a CRM, they're in Flowdesk, they're in Google Contacts. I want to know that total number of people. And I want to know the number of people that are all in that one place. Because a lot of agents that I talk with, they're like, well, I have this whole other chunk of people that like I haven't gotten in there yet. So don't include those. So in this theoretical example, this person has an even 500 people in their database. And what this little formula is doing here is, let's see. Okay. So what this is doing, I programmed this the other day and I'm just thinking through the way I did it. So what this is doing is saying that if you needed 30 people, what this is saying is that for this many people in your database, you need this many more people to do one additional transaction. So in this example, this person would need 17 more people in their database to add one more transaction. So your number is probably different based on the number of people in your database. So what this comes back to is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, where you start to get to know your database. So as an example, there's an agent on my team who has a very small database of 60 people that are currently in our CRM, which is Follow Up Boss. And she closed 8 transactions this year that were self-generated. So she has this like ratio of, she needs only 8 more people in her database to do one transaction. Obviously, if you maintain that quality. There are other agents I've coached where for every 50 people in the database, you can expect one transaction. And it comes back to oftentimes where the people in your database came from. Do you know them? Or are they people who clicked on an ad for a listing 3 years ago and they've been getting some little drip? So basically, this is an opportunity to start to take a look at what you need in your database to accomplish your goals. And then we're going to pull that into the next tab. And that is it for the 2025 recap. I'm just going to check the chat box. Tanya said, would you include everyone we send an email to, or only our top 150, or just past clients, or snail mail, or farm area? Great question. So I would say whatever one thing you're doing the most consistently, I would look at that number. And I think in your case, Tanya, it's definitely email. If you're an agent who's currently doing a monthly mailer to a set number of people, and that's the most consistent, frequent thing, then use that number. But in your case, I would say anyone who's getting your emails, in your Flowdesk account. Any other questions on taking stock? Okay, all right, let's jump to the goal setting. So same thing, same deal. If it's orange, you can play with it. And if it isn't, I recommend leaving it where it is. So this is where you're going to get into setting your goals for next year and what kind of growth you want to aim for over the prior year. So I always recommend looking for an increase in your average sale price, perhaps in your average commission rate, perhaps looking at rebalancing what percentage of your business is going to be listing versus buyer. So in this theoretical example, I had my person jump from 550 to 600 on the buyers and from 600 to 750 on the listings. So plug in the average sale price, the average commission rate you want to project. Maybe you just want to be a realist. Maybe you want to, aim for more. Maybe you want to aim for more on the listing side and have, different value propositions surrounding that. And then the number of units that you project to sell. And then this is going to put it all together for you with your total units, your total volume. And then again, if you are going to collect some sort of fee, then you can factor that in to your numbers. And if not, just leave that at 0. And then it's going to total up your total gross commissions, breaking out the buyer versus the listing, any admin fee income. And then again, if you want to put in any referral fee income or revenue profit share income, same thing. So I'm just going to take a breath, give everybody a minute or two to just draft. And I got a question, what do you mean by an admin fee we collect? So my team charges a $425 admin fee to our clients in addition to the percentage commission. So that's income to the team. And that's just something I started doing a long time ago. If it's not something you do, just don't even worry about it. I just like everyone to think about all the streams of income because sometimes there are simple things you can tweak. Okay. I'm going to jump to cost of sales. So these are things, cost of sale. A lot of this comes, by the way, from the budget from the book by Gary Keller, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So, and this is meant to be a budget slash income sheet that you could give a bookkeeper and have them build they could basically plug this into QuickBooks and then run your books, and every month match everything to the right place. Listing income here, referral fees. This much went to my broker. These are all my expenses, and like here's my net. So this would translate perfectly. So cost of sales, the first two line items here are if you have an agent working for you on your team as a buyer agent, listing agent, or even a showing partner if they're getting, a percentage of every deal. So if you do not have team members that are agents, you can just leave these blank. If you do have team members who are agents, you're going to need to, work in some kind of formula or guesstimate that, they're going to get 50% of, most of the buyers, and that's going to be about this much money. So that's kind of how you would plug that in for these. And then if you do expect to pay referral fees at a similar level to the prior year, I would, just bring that number over. And then here you want to either put in your cap, your broker fees for the year, or if you are on a split, you are going to put in the percentage that the broker is keeping. So in the 80-20 example, that would be 80% to you, 20% to the brokerage. If you click on field 34B, you'll see it says 0.2, that's 20%. If it's a different percentage, you can change that, 0.1, 10%, 0.5, 50%, whatever that may be. If you're at a brokerage with a cap and you're on a team like Malcolm is, you could put your cap in the cap field and then also put your team split there, and then that would reflect everything. So you can blend this as you see fit. And then the last line is any other broker fees. So if you have like a monthly fee, if you have an annual E&O, if you have anything else I'm not thinking of to list, you can put that there. And then that is going to be all of your commission related expenses. And then that will show you your gross profit. Any questions before we jump to the budget? Oh, great question. Will we put our TC fee in that last line? Yes, that's a perfect place to put that. Great one. You guys tracking with me? Anyone need me to slow down, or are we good? We're good. Okay, awesome. All right. So then anticipated sources of business. This is something, again, to just sort of forecast. I think what could make the most sense is generally to, build off the prior year and up the number of units for anywhere that you're going to focus and have a plan for or build a plan for. If there's anything you're going to cut and don't ever want to do again, I encourage you to just plop a 0 there and say, I am just not going to do that, especially if it's like these, low numbers of units that are taking up a lot of like valuable, headspace in the, the mental operating system. If there's some tabs you want to close out, I encourage you to do so. Yeah. And I think this section could really inform, okay, like I need to, go ahead with my strategies later of like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to improve this, et cetera. So, and Tanya's asking a really good question. Where do we put cost of photos, printing, staging for each listing as a listing cost of sales? So I do have that in my expenses. Technically, you could categorize it as a cost of sale. I tend to keep the cost of sale section to be things that are basically like commission income or close to it, but there's no wrong way to do it. Wherever your head works with that is totally fine. So I'm going to give you guys a moment. If you haven't filled in your anticipated sources of business, it'll, start to add up the number of units at the bottom, and then make sure you get near the number of units you're anticipating doing. Okay, so now I'm going to plug this whole like, do I need to grow my database, or do I need to just get people into it? Or do I have everyone in there and I need to nurture them more effectively, more consistently, more artfully? a lot of people say, oh, I need to do all three. And I'm like, yes, that could be true and might be true for a lot of us. But like, what is the one thing that would make the biggest impact? And it might not be the thing that would make the fastest impact. But if there's something that you know that if you did it, it would set you up for 10 more years of wild success, even if it doesn't show up right away, I encourage you to also like bear that in mind in how you think about this. So first thing I want you to do is plug in that same number of people that are currently in your database. And then on the next line, this is running an automatic calculation that you need 15 people in your database for every one transaction that you want to close. The rule of thumb has kind of ping-ponged between 10 and 20 relationships per transaction in your database. And you might have run your calculation on the prior page and found something to be, totally different for you. What is the number below the total people database? That part of it didn't copy over for me. That's interesting. Oh, on the first page. Okay. So I would say just focus. I think the best thing to do for here is just the current number of people in your database. I don't know why that didn't copy. Shannon, I can sidebar with you on why that didn't work. For now, the thing that I really would love to draw everyone's attention to is assuming this 15 people rule of thumb. And if you know it's a different number for you, you can go in this formula here and change it from 15 to 20 or 10 or whatever that is. Then it's going to auto calculate the gap. So in this case, this says, oh, this person needs 600 relationships to accomplish this. That's a gap of 100 people. And we need to meet or add, 8 to 9 people per month. There's also something to be said for front loading that. So if, my biggest piece of advice to anyone with an established business, which is most of you, is if there's any big catch up you need to do, put that on your calendar for January. Set one day to sit down at a computer away from anyone who would interrupt you. Go through your phone contacts, import it all, go through your email contacts for all your accounts. If you have an old school address book, pull it out, your wedding invite list, baby shower, anything else where you planned, organized, your Christmas card mailing list, and get them in there. And then also you need to have, some sort of quality marketing systems to build off of that. But the first step is to get them all in one place. One of the best ways to drive your business is to have a goal of how many people you're going to meet and add to your database each month. And if you're going to hang one thing on your wall, on a Post-it, I think that's the number. If we're talking about building online followership and relationships, I think those conversion rates are really different. I would encourage that to almost be an additional focus that is not so much related to just people who And again, this comes back to I use my social media presence to build relationships all the time. I'm just not someone that's posting a viral reel about a local coffee shop and then acquiring 300 new followers at once. That is awesome. I just personally don't find any joy in creating that kind of content. I really just making content for agents. That's why you all are here. That's where my heart is. But my point is the people who are generally responding to me on social media and becoming clients, I did meet them somewhere. This morning, I actually woke up really early. I have no idea why. I was probably slightly anxious / excited about today. And it hit me this week that I hadn't friended or followed all the preschool moms from both of my kids' classes. And it's perfect. I've, slowly gotten to know them. So for me, it's now more natural time. I went and found everyone I could, I spent 20 minutes just doing a quick catch up, followed all these people. More than half of them have followed me back. And, so it's I know them. They're not just straight up online relationships. Those are the kinds of things that work really, really well for me. And then later I use giveaways and other tools to draw them into my client world even more fully. I do certain client appreciation events that I invite people, even if they're not a client yet. And I use things like that, as a conversion tool. So if you had one takeaway from today, I'd love to pick more than one, but I would say if you could walk away knowing how many people you need to meet and add into one concentrated CRM system per month, I think that's a huge win. Because I think if you're even like a little bit established in this business, it's a little easy to let things stagnate, especially if you're like busy and you're a mom. Like I have a lot of clients that I help move out of state, and people like have family members who become realtors, people pass away. So it's like there is a need to like stay ahead of that, even when you're at like a super established place. So that's the end of my sermon on database growth. Um, and then what I want to, end with here on the workshop section of things is expenses. So this is just like totally made up numbers of like ballparks that could apply to somebody's business. So essentially you can go through this and fill in. What I recommend doing is, if you do keep books for this year, to look at them and then, add something for inflation slash, make changes based on anything you're going to cut or change, especially from like a lead generation standpoint. Otherwise, these are annual numbers. That's a question I get all the time. So annual figures for different things that you might pay for, business travel, coaching, courses, personal property tax is a thing you do in Maryland at least once a year. I have a storage unit with, and I stage my listings as a value proposition to my clients at my expense. So I have things in my budget that you will not use, and you have things that are not in mine. So obviously I encourage you to play around with this, change the fields. I've got some tips for you here in purple, like making sure you have business liability insurance and an umbrella policy. Lead generation, this is something where you might have like something that looks very different than mine. Although if you're very referral based, I would imagine you have a budget for client events, CRM, maybe gifting. I send gifts for, excuse me, gifts for referrals, gifts for birthdays, cards for birthdays. So that's like what that category is about. Oh, closing gifts. I am a closing gifter. Other marketing expenses. My listing photo video is actually a formula in here. Based on, how many listings times photography cost. I laughed last week when I taught this. 150 per listing was my like pre-COVID photography cost. But anyway, that's how you can work that in, postage, etc. If you pay rent to an office, you can put that there. I've got my storage unit in here. Professional services. One of my tips here is to budget for bookkeeping if you want to start delegating something and having someone help you with that. And then the salaries and benefits section, that would be a spot for any W-2 salaries. So if you have someone on payroll, an administrator, something like that, that would go there. Independent contractors would be anyone who you don't have on payroll. Virtual assistant, where you have a contract, someone you're maybe paying hourly, but it's 1099. Like that's how I function with my errand runners. If you have like a marketing person that's on a contract, things like that, I would put those in the independent contractor section. If you have payroll service or use any sort of like recruiter for hiring expenses, that's in there. I actually don't have any hiring expenses now. I do all of my hiring through Facebook posts. A topic for another day. Every amazing person in my team came from a social media relationship. Sometimes a client, but usually because social media started the entire train. And one other little tip I always give, if you do any charitable giving, to run that through your business, and then it's on your P&L, and then that's one less thing for you to tally up for your personal tax return every year. So just always looking for ways to create efficiencies. So the way this works is all the orange line items roll up to the bold piece above, and then that all adds up to your total expenses. And then your net profit is here. So in this example, this person had a gross commission of $750, a gross profit of $595 after broker fees, and then $595 minus the $45,000 in expenses. They are at a profit of $549,850. One thing I get into with my academy students, which we won't be getting into right now, is then looking at your tax planning and making sure that you have an amount that you're setting aside every month. I recommend like getting into high yield savings and having something that you don't touch to pay your own taxes, and having calendar reminders around that. Okay. Any questions on the goals and budget section? Okay. All right, I'm going to look at my notes and see what else do I want to cover that we haven't talked about. Yeah, I think actually I'll end with this in this, other suggestions for money management. There are some simple rhythms that I use to attend to my money that keep me on point. I always have a tax planning and tax return review meeting with my CPA after my return is done and look at strategies for what we need to change and do next year. I like to meet with my financial advisor twice a year. So those are like my big annual meetings. And then at least twice a year, I have a really simple sheet where I track my net worth. So balances in my bank account, value of all my investments, value of my real estate, et cetera. Um, I heard this great phrase yesterday. It doesn't actually totally apply to this, but I wrote it down. I'm going to butcher it, even though it was short. When you pay attention. I love that. I was talking about like paying for coaching versus like getting free advice from YouTube or whatever. Um, where was I going with that? Similar to the net worth. When you pay attention to your net worth, you really can grow it. And just like having your eye on the prize. I started tracking my net worth over a decade ago, and and it's changed. And I know that part of it is because it's something I was taught to value, because it wasn't something I was intrinsically thinking about when I got in the business, was like, how can I increase my net worth? But ultimately, the tricky thing about real estate as an industry is it's a very active income. We need to do a lot to earn the income. If we go away tomorrow or take a 6-month sabbatical, unless you have a team, the transactions stop and the income stops. So it's, looking at like, that bigger picture, which is a conversation far beyond the constraints of today, but looking at your net worth is definitely a really great starting point for that. I have a monthly habit of two key things. Number one, I review my profit and loss statement. I print it because I don't know about you guys, but certain things digital, like I just don't, I take notes by hand and I look at my money stuff by hand. So I print the entire detail statement and look at every bit of it. And I mark anything that I need to like look into, deal with, adjust, etc. And similarly, I actually look at my spending twice a month because I see it on my profit and loss statement. But I also still have my credit card statement come to me via mail just because I don't have to print it. And I go through and look at every single item. And there is this really great strategy that I learned from Ben Kinney. If any of you know who he is, he's I don't even know what he is, a mogul now. But at one point he was a coach for real estate agents. And he recommends sort of like this 3 highlighter system. So when you're looking at like a bank statement, a credit card statement, Venmo would be another good one to look at. Is it just me? So having 3 highlighters, like the red highlighter is things I need to cut. So just like going through it once and being like, what do I need to cut? What do I need to unsubscribe from? What is not yielding a return? What is something I just need to deal with and it's been on my mind? That's the first pass. Then the second pass is, what am I definitely going to keep? It makes sense. The price is right. The return is there. I need this. It's working for me. Those would be all the green lights. And then what's left on the third pass is like that yellow light of things that I'm like, what is that? Like that. Where did that come from? Why am I still doing that? Is this really making sense? Is this something I'm having this like feeling that it probably doesn't, like, I'm not ready to stop, but I need to keep an eye on it. That area is where I find a lot of my opportunity for just like expense control. So if you were just looking for like a really simple takeaway from today, if you're not getting printed statements of some kind, or you're not running through them a couple times, I find it's like the second or third pass where I just even start to like see and notice what opportunities are there from an expense management side of things. So that is how I keep a handle on things. And it's not always perfect, but it's pretty functional for me to have those like simple rhythms. And then I have calendar reminders for the quarterly estimated taxes. And then I find it very valuable to have a CPA/bookkeeper. My person does both services, but you can also get just a solo bookkeeper, and having a financial advisor and having those meetings and just like having that time to zoom out, because like I can spend a lot of time in the immediate. So I don't know if any of you resonate with that as well, but that's a spot where I can be very comfortable in the here and the now. So I would love to answer questions. So I'm going to stay and answer all of your questions for as long as we need to go. So anything you just want to kind of unpack a little bit, spitball on, put that in the chat box. And what I want to say is if you connect with like my energy and my teaching style and you want way more of these kinds of systems and mindsets in your life, one of my 2 coaching systems might be your next step. So the Academy is the first one I mentioned. It's for you if this would be like your litmus test. If you're selling a lot of real estate, but you know you're missing out on even more business because you're not marketing to your database the way you want to and should, you might need the Academy. If you want beautiful, consistent marketing that's focused on sphere, referral, repeat, and organic social media. In fact, if you wish you could just like steal my marketing and use it, that is a huge piece of what you would get in the Academy. If your business is at a level where you need things templated and checklisted and you're wasting time and there's mental load and you can't delegate because you can't get people to do it the way you want to because nothing's documented, you definitely need the Academy. And if you want to just learn faster and work with someone like me, that's really where we jump in. I've taken my systems, my lead gen tactics, playbooks, and packaged them with a bow so you can take it and use it right away. And I'm offering a little bonus to anyone who joins the Academy by the end of the year. You'll get a week of additional one-on-one, it's like a one-on-one intensive for a full week where I'll work with you every day, all day on your business with your goals, your systems, your marketing, bettering your email marketing, auditing your social media, you name it. And the way to get going with anything with me is to just book a call. So I'm going to just drop that link here. I also just started a private small group mastermind called CEO Club. It's for business owners who want to really go to the next level with how they're operating. It's not a course. It's coaching and consulting. It's very intimate. It's high touch. It's personalized mentorship, one-on-one with me, as well as with a small group and live calls and Zooms and super kind of high-end white glove bespoke kind of coaching experience. So if you're curious about any of that, you can book a call with me. And if you're not, that's totally cool. And I'm just glad you came today. Does anyone have anything they want to reflect on? And if anyone even wants to unmute themselves. Tanya's brought up a really great point. I'm still struggling with the number of my database. Is still giving me some grief as to what number to use. The people that actually know me and I'd stop and talk to at the grocery store or gas station, and they would recognize me and I would recognize them versus the email list. I would say that it's probably a little bit of analysis paralysis of like which matters. I think the first like litmus test is like, is everybody in there? Are there people you haven't put in, whether they're slightly random or someone you would definitely see and hug at the grocery store? So that's like where it would start. And then in your case, since I know a lot more about your business, I would say that the way I market is I talk to the people. I talk to everyone like I would definitely recognize them at the grocery store. But I will say my business is at a point where there are people who know me and I do not know them. And that still works really, really well. That is something that has happened partially as an evolution of my Facebook group that has created this like brand right here in like my zip code that was not, I mean, it was already the case when I was just producing a lot and had my signs everywhere. And back then I was doing like 5,000 postcards a month and it was kind of wild. So I would say I would look at the total size of the list. And I think at the end of the day, if you're like, okay, there are 3,000 people in my database, but I only did 20 units, it's almost more a clue of what to start looking at. Is it like, okay, is there something missing in the marketing, in the quality or the consistency or the modality? I'm not a big fan of deleting people and like paring down unless it's like literal junk. People from like, I don't know, like Facebook ads where like they're opting out left and right. And you're like, you know what, like I just don't need this stuff in here. But I think in a way it doesn't matter. Part of what I focus on in the way I run my events and certain aspects of my business is I make sure that anyone that's like an actual past client or referral source, they do get treated to experiences and have access to things that I do that the masses don't get. But I don't sleep on the masses because I'm just amazed by who just appears and is ready to transact and hasn't said a word for 10 years. I could give you like countless examples just sitting here. I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried. Does anyone want to unmute and just share like an observation or takeaway from today before I let you all go? And can I just shout out Jason Lerner? We've got a lender in the room learning for himself and probably others too. Love that. Do you want to say hi?
Yeah, thanks for letting me crash the party. I got my license 23 years ago. I never used it thinking I could help better serve my folks. And if I can think like a realtor, it helps me be a servant to you guys. So thanks for sharing all the information with me for sure.
Thanks, Jason.
And I've
Anyone?
seen you in action over the last decade, and I know how powerful your marketing and your budgeting and just being on your side, seeing you in action, I can appreciate how much of an impact you can have on other people's careers for sure. I've seen it.
Thank
I've
you.
seen you grow other people's careers. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very kind. I enjoy it very much. Does anyone want to just name their goal for next year? Units, volume, something, big number, net income?
I'm a 20 to 25 is where I'm
Love
happy.
it. Love it, Shannon. And message me if that spreadsheet thing isn't working. We'll talk about it. Anyone else?
I just want to, thank you, Tina, and, even everybody else who's contributing. I'm brand new to all of this. So it's learning a skill, right? And so I come from a different background. And so the world of real estate is a brand new world that I'm excited about. And so I get excited just hearing about all the possibilities. So thank you for taking your time to break it down.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. And I feel like I wasn't in these conversations in the first couple of years of my career. So just being in the right room, a lot can take care of itself.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, it's 3:03. We're done. We did it. If anyone wants to sidebar later about goals or whatever, reach out. And thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy almost New Year. Talk soon. Bye, everybody.